good morning. Welcome to Cabinet CFE Classroom. Our today's topic is quite relevant for examination as well as for our practical investigation purpose. The purpose of this particular session is to make the fraud examiners aware that what is the importance of documentation and how it helps in our investigation purpose. So the name of the topic is Analyzing Documentation. As we have already discussed in our law section, the evidences could be of two types, direct evidences and circumstantial evidences. The direct evidences are those which directly approve or disapprove any fact, whereas circumstantial evidences are those where the circumstances are like that they approve or disapprove a particular fact. So while talking about the evidences, direct or indirect or circumstantial, there are always documentation attached to it, and we need to understand that what kind of documentations are acceptable in court of law. There are two things which are very relevant for evidences. One, the chain of custody, and second is relevance. So being a fraud investigator, we need to always keep that in mind, that whenever we are collecting the documents, one, that we will try not to touch original much. We always try to collect the original document rather than having a photocopy or the duplicate, but keep those original documentation in your file. While analyzing and investigating the matter, try to have a photocopy of it and then play with those documents. If you touch original documents too much, you may end up spoiling that same. So always try to collect the original document and keep it in your main file. Secondly, while collecting the evidence, try to touch the evidences in a way that you will not spoil the fingerprints on that. So we have a detailed discussion about fingerprint, and then you will understand that how critical it can be. And then there are a lot of areas where you will be needing the help of forensic examiners. We as a fraud investigator are not forensic examiners. So wherever it's possible and required, try to send those documentation to the forensic experts. So these 2-3 things we need to keep in mind while proceeding with this chapter called Analyzing Documentation. Now as we understand the documents are important and we need to collect the original document, let's try to understand some part of the documentation which might include the handwriting, the fingerprint and so on. Let's try to understand there's something called forgery. Forgery is something where somebody is trying to recreate the signature of someone else. That is what we call forgery. When it comes to forgery, we as a fraud investigator need to understand what kind of characteristics a handwriting has. You'll be surprised to understand and know that a person cannot create the same signature twice in his or her life. So if you have created a particular type of signature now, you may not be able to recreate it again. But then also there are certain characteristics in the handwriting which is very important to identify whether this handwriting belongs to a particular person or not. So as a fraud investigator, we need to understand that there can be certain areas which can mislead us to believe that this handwriting belongs to someone else, such as class characteristics. Class characteristics means there are certain characteristics in the handwriting which belongs to a particular class. Lot of people may have similar class characteristics. That should not mislead our investigation. We need to try to get more evidences to collect handwriting sample, to have more evidences whether this handwriting belongs to a particular suspect or not. And then comes copycat style. Most of us as a young kid used to copy the handwriting of our parents or somebody else in our class. We call that copycat style. The copycat style can also be a factor which can mislead the investigation, because some people create similar handwriting characteristic than the others. So that is the copycat style, and then comes copybook style. In a lot of schools in USA, the kids being taught a particular handwriting style. And if you look at the handwriting of most of those kids, they are having similar class characteristics. They make same alphabet in a similar manner. That is again another factor which can mislead our investigation, but we need to be careful and understand that these are certain factors which can mislead us. Then we have to collect more evidences about handwriting. Now when we understand the certain characteristics about the handwriting, let's try to understand what are the reasons a particular person may have variation in the handwriting. A variation in handwriting generally happens due to old age, certain sickness, or the injury in hand. Or if you are trying to write in the moving vehicle, your handwriting might be different than what you generally make. So these are certain natural variation. Then comes forgery. As we understand, forgery is something where a suspect is trying to create similar signature of someone else. So there can be various types of forgery. First type of forgery is called simulated forgery. A simulated forgery is something where you are putting the signature of someone else and trying to copy the similar handwriting or similar signature. It's called simulated forgery. In simulated forgery, as we understand that two signatures cannot be exactly same. The moment you find two signatures which are absolutely same, you have to make sure that one of them is forged. And which one is forged is something which we need to investigate. The second type of forgery is called auto forgery. I do not want my handwriting to be recognized in future. So I am trying to make my signature in a way which is not something which generally I make. It's called auto forgery. So suspect himself is making his wrong signature today so that he can deny in future that the signature belongs to him. Then comes auto forgery. Auto forgery is a freehand style. So I do not know what kind of signature A is making, but with a free hand I am making a signature which looks really same as A. We call that auto forgery. So these are some type of forgery. Now when we understand about handwriting and forgery, some more thing which we need to understand. As we discussed, being a fraud investigator, we are not a forensic specialist. So there can be a lot of areas where you will be needing the help of forensic examiner, such as handwriting samples, such as checking the quality of paper, and if you are trying to compare two types of paper. So comparing two paper is something which goes under forensic examination. If somebody is trying to investigate the edges of page, or if it's torn, then torn edges, it is again a forensic examination work. So anything related to handwriting, fingerprints, something related to paper comparison, something related to photocopies, fax copies, all this goes under forensic examination. As and when we investigate a matter, if we come across any such situation which does not fall in our forte, then I strongly recommend you guys to send it to forensic examiner. That will give you more productive results than the other ones. Once we understand about handwriting, let's move to the another part which says that how to look at the handwriting. Now we have already know that there are certain factors which can mislead us. We also understand about forgery. Then how will we take sample of a suspect? There can be two type of way. One, dictated sample, and second is non-dictated samples. Non-dictated sample is something where suspect is writing something as a normal course of business. He would not even be knowing that this handwriting will be used for comparison purpose. Ideally, this is one of the best way to get the sample, because suspect would not try to recreate anything in a different manner. They would not even be knowing that it will be used for comparison purpose. But there are certain points which you have to understand here when it comes to non-dictated sampling. One, try to take sample as close to the event as possible. As we discussed, there are certain variation in a person's handwriting with age. Try not to give too much of time between the event and the handwriting sample. Second, try to give a paragraph which includes similar alphabet which you really want to check. Maybe those alphabet which comes in the signature also. That is something which will give us more productive result. Then comes dictated sampling. A dictated sampling is something where you take a court's permission and then you ask suspect to give a handwriting sample. Most of the time you may find that suspect is not willing to give the handwriting sample. You might have to approach to the court and take the court permission. After taking court permission, you can tell the suspect to give a handwriting sample. There are certain factors which needs to be understood here. One, do not hurry. Give the suspect enough time to write. At the same time, try not to show anything original to the suspect because he may try to copy the similar handwriting. So if you are trying to compare two signatures, do not show him originals, else he will try to copy it. So that is what we call dictated samples. Then something more related to handwriting is called indented handwriting. When we write on a paper, generally on the next paper you find indented writing. So the impression of your handwriting goes to the next page also. We call that indented handwriting. That can be very crucial and important for our investigation purpose. So try to save and take the sample of indented writing carefully. At the same time, try not to scratch it or try to shade it and recreate the indented writing. It will not only corrupt the handwriting sample but will also make very difficult for forensic examiner to recreate it. So just take the sample, preserve it and send it for forensic examination. Indented handwriting can be very useful for our investigation purpose. Now once we understand about handwriting, let's move to the another part which is also very important. It is called the fingerprints. As we all understand that fingerprint of a person is unique. No two people can have a same fingerprints. That means fingerprints can be very crucial for our investigation purpose. There are two types of impression in fingerprints. One, the latent, and second is patent. Latent means invisible. Those fingerprints which actually comes or passes on to any surface due to your body oil, salt and acids. Whenever we touch any soft surface or a hard surface, our fingerprints get transferred. If it is a soft material like paper, it will get absorbed and it will remain in that surface forever till the time you try to touch again and then over the earlier fingerprints. But the problem arises with the hard surface like a glass, a plastic material or anything which is hard. Those kind of fingerprint, if are latent, will get spoiled with humidity, heat or any other natural reasons. So if it is on a soft material, the way to handle it is slightly different than the way we do it on a hard surface. Then comes patent fingerprint. Patent fingerprints are those which are visible. So if I am having any paint, blood or any color in my hand, my fingerprint will get transferred to the another surface. We call that patent. Now as we understand, the fingerprints which are patent are relatively much easier to investigate as compared to latent one. So one thing which we have to be very careful, that while taking sample, always wear gloves. Do not use tweezers if you are playing with the documents because you may spoil the fingerprint on it. Tweezers can only be used when you are picking up something from the corner. But gloves are always must. Whenever you are taking sample for latent paper. Now let's discuss if latent fingerprints are there on a soft material like a paper or a document. Just pick up the sample with gloves in hand. Put it in the envelope. Make sure the envelope should be paper envelope. Whenever you put these fingerprints in any kind of container which is made of plastic or glass, there could be acids inside, and that can play with the fingerprint on the soft surface. It may spoil the fingerprint. So try to pick up carefully, put it in the envelope, seal it, date it and sign it. Once we have taken the sample, we can send it to forensic examiner for further investigation purpose. Try not ever to do the fingerprint powder dusting on the soft surface. There are powders available in the market that's called fingerprint dusting powder. We should never ever try to use those powders for soft material like paper. It will absolutely spoil the fingerprint and will give you no results. So this exercise will be absolute unnecessary. Now let's come to the hard surface. Say glass, say pen, anything which is hard. Here you might use the fingerprint dusting powder. Once you use those powder, the fingerprints will be more visible. So those should be the technique when it comes to fingerprint. As we already discussed that we are not expert in the forensic examination, wherever possible and required, please send it for forensic examination. Now when we understand the relevance of documentation, let's talk about our documentation file. A file for us is very, very important because on this basis itself we're gonna create our main report. So one, that there has to be all relevant documentation in the file. Secondly, try to preserve the original documentation in a manner that the chain of custody is maintained. As we have already discussed, court is very particular about chain of custody. So the chain of custody includes what did we receive, when did we receive, in which position did we receive, and who all touched this document or the evidences. So whenever as a fraud investigator we collect an evidence, try to preserve it. If it's an envelope or a sealed container, just put your initials and date on it. If you do not put your initials on it, there can be a lot of problems in the future, such as LEB documents. LEB documents are those documents which appears out of nowhere. May possible that during investigation, one piece of document will arise from nowhere, and it is generally in favor of a suspect. So in order to avoid those problems, try to put your initials and date on that particular document in a way that it should not be recreated. Then come long lost will. Long lost will also is a similar problem like an LEB. Most probably when it is a will related issue, a new will arises out of nowhere, which is always in favor of a suspect or a person who comes with this new will. So all those problems can arise if a fraud investigator will not create chain of custody. So this is how we have to collect the evidences, and then comes how to file it. There has always needs to be having a chronology of documents. Ideally, we need to put the documents in the chronology of event. What occurred first, and then next, and then next. If it's not possible, then you may put it as per transaction or as per dates. But there has to be a chronology in the documentation file. It will not only help in your investigation, but also help a user. If somebody is trying to read your file, they should know what occurred first, but there has to be chronology in the documentation. And then come checklist. We can't underestimate the checklist. So every time fraud investigator investigate, he needs to create a checklist, and please check it regularly as to what have we collected, what are we left with. So all this checklist can also be very important. So that's all about this chapter called analyzing documentation. This chapter can be very useful for our investigation purpose, because most of the time we may play around with the handwritings, the fingerprints and the documentation. So we need to understand the best practices, how to collect the evidences and how to preserve it. So that's all about this chapter called analyzing document. In my next section, I'll come up with a new topic. Till then, stay tuned. Thank you so much.